The Zetharian Empire's fleet hovered above Earth, an intimidating display of power. The sky was filled with massive warships, their dark hulls gleaming in the sunlight. The Earth's defense systems had failed. Their armies were crushed, their cities falling one by one. Humanity, once proud and powerful, now faced the edge of extinction. But in the face of hopelessness, there was one thing they had left: a weapon unlike any other. The weapon was a singularity bullet, a projectile capable of generating a black hole upon impact. It was designed to destroy any target, no matter how powerful. But there was a catch. There was only one shot. No one could guarantee it would work. General Alex Carter, the leader of the last surviving human force, stood before a group of scientists and military strategists. He wasn't the type to rely on hope, but right now, it was all they had. The plan was clear: hit the Zetharian Emperor, their leader, with the singularity bullet, and Earth might have a chance. "We don't have time to question it," Carter said, his voice calm but strained. "Get it ready. I'll make the shot." The room fell silent. The pressure was immense. Carter knew that if he missed, if anything went wrong, Earth would be lost forever. He spent hours preparing for the mission. He and his team had to infiltrate the enemy's fleet and reach the Emperor's flagship. The Zetharians, however, were not easy to sneak past. Their advanced sensors could detect any attempt at stealth. Still, Carter believed in his team. They had managed the impossible before. Maybe they could do it again. As the hours ticked by, the tension in the air grew thicker. Carter and his team were ready to leave their base on Earth and board a stealth ship. The mission was simple in theory: sneak through the enemy lines, approach the Emperor's ship, and fire the singularity bullet directly at him. The success of the mission relied on precision, timing, and, most of all, luck. It was a one-shot chance. "We're ready, General," the pilot of the stealth ship said, his voice betraying a hint of fear. "No turning back now." Carter nodded and took his seat. "Just keep us undetected." The ship slowly rose into the air, blending into the vastness of space as they made their way towards the Zetharian fleet. The stars glowed around them, a stark contrast to the war that raged below. It was beautiful, almost peaceful, until Carter saw the massive shadow of the Emperor's flagship looming in front of him. He could feel the weight of the mission pressing down on him. Every decision, every move would decide the fate of billions. There was no room for error. As they approached the flagship, a new obstacle appeared. A Zetharian destroyer drifted into their path, its sensors scanning the surrounding area. The stealth ship was designed to be nearly invisible, but if it was detected, it would all be over. The destroyer's weapons locked on. "Brace for impact," the pilot shouted. The crew scrambled to prepare, but Carter remained calm. His eyes narrowed as he watched the ship. They needed to get closer, but any move could trigger an alarm. Time was running out. Suddenly, Carter had an idea. He grabbed a console and quickly adjusted the ship's course. "We're going under them," he said. "Full speed." The pilot nodded, pushing the ship downward into a sharp dive. They zipped beneath the destroyer, narrowly avoiding its sensors. The ship was silent now, the crew holding their breath. They had made it past the destroyer, but they were still a long way from the Emperor. The journey felt endless. Carter's mind raced with possibilities. What if they were caught? What if the bullet didn't work? What if they couldn't get close enough? These thoughts plagued him, but he pushed them aside. He had no choice but to move forward. After what felt like an eternity, the stealth ship was finally close enough to the flagship. It was time. Carter grabbed the singularity bullet from its compartment. The device was small but powerful, designed to release an incredible amount of energy, powerful enough to take down a fleet. He knew that this single shot could save Earth, but it could also destroy everything if it didn't land perfectly. "Get ready to fire," Carter said. His voice was steady, but inside, he was a storm of nerves. The pilot navigated the ship into position, his hands shaking. The target was clear: the Zetharian Emperor's command center, a massive, heavily protected area. If the bullet hit its mark, the Emperor's fleet would be rendered useless. Carter aimed carefully, locking the ship's sensors on the Emperor's ship. He took a deep breath. One shot. That's all they had. Firing in 3, 2, 1. The pilot's voice quivered as he pressed the button. The shot was released. In the brief moment between firing the bullet and its impact, Carter saw everything flash before his eyes. The universe seemed to pause time itself, bending under the weight of the shot. The bullet traveled faster than light, and in seconds, it collided with the Emperor's flagship. The explosion was like nothing Carter had ever seen. The entire flagship buckled under the force of the singularity. A black hole began to form, consuming everything in its path. The Zetharian fleet, caught in its gravitational pull, began to crumble. Their ships were pulled into the void, their technology and soldiers disappearing into the abyss. But as the black hole expanded, Carter realized something terrifying. It wasn't just the Emperor's fleet that was being consumed. The singularity bullet had done its job, but the energy released was far more than anyone had expected. The black hole was growing larger, pulling in everything around it, including Earth itself. The team stared in horror at the growing hole in space. They had won the battle, but at what cost? The gravity of the situation was sinking in. "We've got to go now," Carter said urgently. "All ships, retreat." The pilot quickly maneuvered the ship away from the black hole's pull, but Carter's eyes remained locked on the expanding singularity. This victory had come with a heavy price. The future of Earth was uncertain, but for now, they had a moment of hope. The Zetharian Empire was no more. But the cost of that victory was yet to be fully understood. The stars shimmered in the vast expanse of space, their calm beauty a sharp contrast to the chaos unfolding across Earth. The Zarek Dominion, a race of ruthless conquerors, had set their sights on humanity. Their fleet was enormous, their weapons far superior, and their determination unshakable. For months, Earth's defenses had crumbled under the relentless attacks, and now humanity stood on the brink of annihilation. General Kara Wells paced in the war room, the weight of the situation pressing down on her shoulders. The world's greatest scientists had gathered around, working tirelessly on a last-ditch plan. There was only one chance left to save humanity, and it was a plan that no one truly understood. The last hope lay in a single message. "This is it," Kara muttered to herself, glancing at the holographic map of Earth's defenses. "If this doesn't work, we're done." Dr. Lila Donovan, a brilliant scientist and the mind behind the plan, stepped forward. She held a small, glowing device in her hands. The device was the Kia message encoded in a way that could bypass the Zarak Dominion's most powerful minds. The message was unlike any weapon humanity had ever used. It wasn't a missile, a bomb, or an army. It was a thought. "We can broadcast it," Dr. Donovan said, her voice calm but filled with urgency. "But the message isn't just for their soldiers. It's for the entire Dominion. If we succeed, their entire belief system will collapse. They'll turn on each other." Kara stared at the device, trying to grasp the magnitude of it all. "So, you're saying this message can break their will to fight? It'll make them question everything." "Exactly," Dr. Donovan replied. "But there's no guarantee. If it doesn't work, we'll have wasted our last chance." The room fell silent. The message had been designed to plant seeds of doubt in the minds of the Zarek soldiers. It would force them to confront the truth of their empire, the cruelty, the lies, and the brutal reality they had created. If the message succeeded, it would shatter their unity, turning them against their leaders. "We don't have time," Kara said, her voice sharp with determination. "We launch it now." The device was ready. The final steps had been taken. All that was left was to deliver the message. But the Zarak Dominion's fleet was closing in, and their advanced ships were capable of detecting any signal. The message had to be broadcast from a location outside their detection range, far enough from Earth to avoid interception. Kara's plan was simple. They would send the message from an abandoned space station in orbit around Jupiter. The station had been deserted for years, but it was still operational. The Zarak Dominion had no reason to think that anything would be there. It was the perfect hiding spot. As Kara and her team boarded the shuttle, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap. The Zarak Empire had proven time and again how ruthless they were. But she had no choice but to trust the plan. This was the only chance humanity had left. The shuttle blasted off from Earth's surface, cutting through the atmosphere and into the cold emptiness of space. Kara's heart raced as they approached the old space station. The massive, silent structure floated in the distance, like a forgotten relic of the past. It felt strange, almost eerie, as they approached it. The shuttle docked with the station, and the crew quickly disembarked. Kara led the way to the control room, where Dr. Donovan began setting up the device. The plan was straightforward. They would send the message through the station's old communication system, using its powerful transmitters to broadcast it across the galaxy. But there was one problem: they couldn't be sure the Dominion wouldn't detect the signal. "We've got one shot at this," Kara said, her voice low. "If we're caught, we won't be," Dr. Donovan interrupted. "We've done everything we can to hide the transmission." Kara nodded, but the feeling of unease never left her. She watched as Dr. Donovan activated the device. The soft hum of machinery filled the room, and the holographic display flickered to life. The message was ready. "We're broadcasting," Dr. Donovan said, pressing a button. For a moment, nothing happened. The station remained silent. Kara held her breath, waiting for some sign that the message was working. And then, the first response came. The station's monitors blinked, showing signs of interference. The message had reached the Dominion's fleet. But instead of resistance, there was confusion. Zarek soldiers in their command ships began to question orders. They hesitated. For the first time, doubt crept into their minds. "What's happening?" Kara asked, her voice tight with anticipation. "The message is taking hold," Dr. Donovan replied, her eyes wide with disbelief. "It's working." Across the galaxy, the Zarak fleet began to shift. Ships that had been locked in a fierce attack on Earth suddenly stopped firing. The soldiers aboard them looked at each other in confusion, unsure of what to do. The message had begun to spread like a virus, infecting their minds with the truth. For the first time, the Zarak soldiers questioned their mission. They looked at each other, wondering why they were fighting. They remembered the atrocities committed in the name of the Dominion. They wondered why they had believed the lies for so long. But the message wasn't just causing confusion, it was causing fear. Fear that their entire way of life was built on lies. Fear that their leaders had been lying to them all along. On Earth, Kara watched as the Zarak fleet faltered. The tide was turning. The message had worked beyond their expectations, and now, the Zarak soldiers were beginning to turn on each other. Then, the unimaginable happened. A Zarak flagship, once a symbol of unstoppable power, began to fire on its own fleet. Soldiers aboard the ship had turned against their commanders, and the chaos spread like wildfire. The entire Zarak Dominion was crumbling from within. Kara stood in awe. They had won not with weapons, but with a simple message. The message had shattered the foundation of the Dominion, tearing it apart from the inside. The Zarak fleet, once a terrifying force, was now in disarray. Earth had survived. But even as the victory seemed certain, Kara knew this was only the beginning. The message had won the battle, but it had also opened a new chapter. A chapter where nothing was certain, and the true cost of peace would still need to be paid. The war was over, but the questions would remain. The Dominion had fallen, but humanity's future was still uncertain. One thing, however, was clear: sometimes, the most powerful weapon is not the one that explodes, but the one that makes people think. The war had stretched on for years. Earth's last line of defense had crumbled under the relentless onslaught of the Galactic Empire. The Zetharians, a race of cold and calculating warriors, had swept across the stars, their advanced technology overpowering humanity's once great military. Cities were in ruins, people were starving, and the enemy's fleet loomed like a shadow over Earth. Yet, within this grim reality, there was a whisper of hope. General Maya Lawson, commander of Earth's last surviving resistance group, paced back and forth in her underground command center. The walls were lined with screens, showing images of the war-torn world above. Her soldiers, exhausted but determined, waited for her orders. In the corner of the room, a group of scientists worked frantically on a project that could change everything. They had developed something that, if successful, could alter the course of the war. It was a device capable of manipulating gravity itself. "The Zetharians will never see this coming," Mia said, more to herself than anyone else. If it works. Dr. Leo Ramirez, the lead scientist behind the gravity device, looked up from his work. He was a tall man with dark circles under his eyes, a result of sleepless nights spent refining the machine. It has to work, General. It's our only chance. Mia nodded grimly. She trusted Dr. Ramirez, but the stakes were impossibly high. The device could either be their salvation or their doom. If it malfunctioned, it could tear Earth apart. If it worked, it could disrupt the entire Zatharian fleet, rendering them powerless. But there was no guarantee. Time was running out. The enemy fleet was only days away from reaching Earth's atmosphere, and there was no other weapon left to stop them. Their last hope was this gravity-shifting device, a machine capable of altering gravitational forces on a massive scale. It could pull ships to the ground, throw them off course, or even make them collapse in on themselves. But the calculations had to be perfect, or the entire planet could be wiped out in a catastrophic chain reaction. Mia stood before the large metal doors of the lab, her eyes scanning the men and women working inside. "Is the device ready?" she asked. Dr. Ramirez stepped forward, wiping his brow. "Almost. But I can't promise that it will work exactly as planned. We've only tested it on small-scale targets. If it malfunctions, we could lose everything." The weight of his words settled in the air like a heavy fog. Mia's mind raced. If the device failed, it would be the end. If it succeeded, well, it could be their only chance. "We don't have time to play it safe," Mia said. "Launch the device. We don't get a second shot at this." As the scientists made the final preparations, Mia turned to her team of soldiers. "Prepare for deployment. If this works, we'll need to move quickly. The Zatharians won't be down for long." With a final nod, Mia entered the lab, her mind set on the mission ahead. The device was now ready to be deployed, and the only thing that remained was to set it into motion. The Resistance's last remaining ship, a sleek stealth vessel named the Hawk, sat just outside the underground base. It was equipped with the gravity-shifting device, which was designed to be launched directly at the Zatharian fleet. Once deployed, the device would create a field of intense gravity, pulling the ships into a deadly gravitational storm. Mia and her team boarded the Hawk, their faces grim but focused. As they ascended into the atmosphere, the feeling of dread began to settle in. They were flying straight into the heart of the enemy's territory, with only one shot to make a difference. The journey to the Zatharian fleet was tense. The stealth ship systems kept them hidden from enemy scanners, but every second felt like an eternity. Mia stood at the front of the ship, eyes locked on the approaching fleet in the distance. It was massive, more than 200 ships, each armed with weapons capable of destroying entire cities. "Prepare the device for launch," Mia commanded. The ship's systems hummed as the gravity-shifting machine powered up. Dr. Ramirez, who had joined them aboard the ship, worked quickly. "We're almost there," he said, his voice strained with concentration. As they neared the enemy fleet, Mia felt a knot form in her stomach. The Zatharians were beginning to notice them. Their ships began to move into position, blocking any potential escape routes. The Hawk was vulnerable now, and the mission was in its final moments. "Ready, General," Dr. Ramirez called out. "I'm activating the device." Mia's heart pounded in her chest as the countdown began. The ship lurched as the gravity device activated, sending out a pulse that rippled through the fabric of space. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, without warning, the Zatharian fleet was thrown into chaos. Mia watched in awe as the massive ships began to shake and tremble, their engines sputtering out of control. One by one, they started to veer off course, crashing into each other as their gravity fields shifted unpredictably. Some ships crumpled in on themselves, their hulls imploding under the unnatural forces. The others were caught in a deadly spiral, pulled toward an invisible center. "Did it work?" one of the soldiers asked, his voice full of disbelief. Mia stared at the scene unfolding before her. "It's working. But we need to finish this now." The device was continuing to disrupt the Zatharian fleet's gravity, causing them to lose control. Mia could see their flagship, the largest and most powerful ship, struggling to stay in position. The gravitational forces were pulling it toward the planet's surface. We have to act fast, Mia said. We need to send them a final blow. Dr. Ramirez looked over at her, eyes wide with urgency. If we make any more adjustments, we risk destabilizing the entire system. We might lose Earth. Mia gritted her teeth. She couldn't let fear stop them now. Do it. We finish this now, or we lose everything. With a final adjustment, the device sent out one last wave of gravity. The Zetharian flagship, unable to resist the force, collapsed in on itself. A massive explosion erupted as the ship was consumed by its own gravitational collapse. The rest of the fleet followed suit, disintegrating under the overwhelming forces they could not control. As the Zetharian fleet disintegrated, Mia let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. The threat was over. Earth was safe. But as she looked out at the remnants of the enemy fleet, something nagged at her. The power of the gravity device had saved them, but it had also changed the very fabric of space. What other consequences might arise from playing with the forces of gravity? For now, however, they had won. But the true cost of victory would only be revealed with time. The war between humanity and the Exorthian Empire had reached its boiling point. Earth had been besieged for years, the skies filled with enemy warships and the ground scorched by relentless attacks. The Zotharians were ruthless conquerors, their technology far beyond anything humanity had ever imagined. With each passing day, the human resistance grew weaker, and it seemed as though the end was near. But there was a secret. Deep beneath the surface of Earth, inside a hidden research facility known only as the Nexus, scientists had been working on something extraordinary. A weapon unlike anything ever conceived, a weapon that could change the entire course of the war. It wasn't a gun, a bomb, or an army of soldiers. No, it was something much more terrifying. It was called the evolution weapon. Dr. Elias Carter, a brilliant geneticist, paced nervously in front of a large, reinforced glass chamber. Inside, it was a being unlike any other, a creature that had been created using a combination of human and alien DNA. It was an experiment, a creation of pure potential. But whether or not it would work, no one could be sure. The evolution weapon was designed to adapt. It could evolve in real time, growing stronger, smarter, and more deadly with each challenge it faced. The idea was simple. The weapon would be unleashed on the Exorthian forces, and it would adapt to whatever strategy the enemy used. It could evolve faster than any human or alien, countering attacks before they even happened. It was humanity's last hope. Are we ready? General Sophia Harlan, leader of the human resistance, asked as she entered the lab, her voice sharp but filled with tension. Her soldiers had been fighting a losing battle for far too long. She had seen too many friends fall, too many cities burn. She knew the time for strategy was over. If this works, it'll be the end of the war. If it doesn't, she let the words hang in the air, knowing that if the evolution weapon failed, humanity would fall. Dr. Carter nodded, his hands shaking as he adjusted the controls. It's ready. But there's no guarantee. We've never tested it against an enemy force like this. The creature inside the chamber was still motionless. It looked almost human, but its features were sharper, more defined. Its skin shimmered with an unnatural sheen, and its eyes glowed with an eerie light. The creature was a hybrid, a fusion of humanity's best traits and the Exorthians' most terrifying abilities. General Harlan studied the creature, her face hardening. We don't have any other options. Let's see if it works. With a single command, Dr. Carter activated the chamber. The creature stirred, its eyes snapping open as it took its first breath of life. A low growl escaped its throat, and it flexed its limbs, testing its newfound strength. It was alive, and it was ready. The evolution weapon was not a machine, and it wasn't a human. It was something in between, something born of desperation and hope. It was humanity's final gamble. The doors to the chamber opened, and the creature stepped out. Its movements were fluid, almost graceful, yet there was an underlying power in every step. It looked directly at General Harlan. It was time to send it into battle. Prepare the launch, General Harlan ordered. We have one shot at this. The creature was fitted with a special suit designed to enhance its abilities, and it was placed aboard a high-speed transport. The mission was simple: infiltrate the Exorthian command center, eliminate their leader, and disable their fleet. The evolution weapon had the power to adapt to whatever the enemy threw at it. But there was one thing that could never be predicted: humanity's ability to trust it. The transport ship ascended. The weight of the mission settled over everyone. The evolution weapon was their last hope. If it succeeded, Earth would be free. But if it failed, there would be no second chance. The ship flew through the atmosphere, cutting through the clouds and into the vast expanse of space. Ahead, the Exorthian flagship waited, a massive fortress of black metal and deadly weapons. It was protected by an impenetrable shield, and its forces were unlike anything humanity had ever faced. The creature inside the transport ship was calm. Its glowing eyes scanned the control room as it seemed to sense the tension. It knew what was expected of it. It had been designed for this moment. General Harlan watched it through the observation window. There was fear in her eyes, but she pushed it aside. There was no time for fear now. The Exorthian Empire had to be destroyed. The ship neared the flagship. The evolution weapon was deployed. It landed silently on the surface of the enemy ship, its powerful form barely making a sound as it moved with precision. The creature's heightened senses allowed it to navigate the labyrinthine corridors of the flagship with ease. Every step it took was calculated, its mind processing thousands of possible scenarios in real time, adapting to the environment and the enemy it encountered. The first guards came into view. They were alien creatures, towering over the evolution weapon, their weapons drawn. But the creature didn't hesitate. It lunged at them, its speed overwhelming. Within seconds, the guards were incapacitated, their weapons shattered, their bodies thrown aside as the evolution weapon continued its advance. General Harlan's voice crackled over the intercom. "Status update. Are you in position?" "We've breached the outer defenses," the creature's handler reported. "It's evolving faster than we anticipated. It's changing its strategy mid-fight." "Keep moving forward," Harlan ordered, her voice tight with anticipation. The creature encountered more resistance as it moved deeper into the flagship. Each time, it adapted. The Exorthian forces began to grow more desperate, throwing everything they had at the weapon. But each attack was countered before it could land, each strategy dismantled before it could take hold. The evolution weapon was unstoppable. Finally, the creature reached the heart of the flagship, the command center. Inside, the Exorthian Supreme Commander waited, surrounded by his most loyal guards. His eyes narrowed when he saw the creature enter. "Impossible," the commander sneered. "You cannot defeat us. We are the perfect species." The creature didn't respond. Instead, it moved toward the commander with unblinking eyes. In a flash, it was upon him, its adaptive abilities allowing it to bypass the commander's guards with ease. The creature's claws reached out, and the commander's reign was over in an instant. With the commander dead, the remaining forces scattered. The evolution weapon had done what it was created to do. The Exorthian fleet was now leaderless, confused, and without direction. It was only a matter of time before they surrendered or were destroyed. General Harlan watched from the control room as the flagship systems collapsed. "We did it," she whispered to herself. But as the evolution weapon stood over the fallen commander, it paused for a moment, as if contemplating something deeper. Its glowing eyes shifted toward Earth. Had humanity unleashed something they could no longer control? The weapon had evolved into something far beyond its creator's intentions. It was a force of nature, now a being that had surpassed its purpose. And its next steps were uncertain. For humanity, the war was over. But the true cost of creating the evolution weapon was just beginning. The war between humanity and the Zakar Empire had been raging for decades. It wasn't just a battle for Earth, it was a fight for survival. The Zakars, a ruthless alien race, had invaded Earth with their advanced weaponry, tearing through cities and leaving only destruction in their wake. Earth's military had been overwhelmed, and the resistance was barely holding on. In the midst of the chaos, one last hope remained: a secret weapon that could change everything. But no one knew where it was. Not even the highest-ranking members of Earth's command knew its exact location. The weapon was a myth, a whisper in the shadows of the resistance. Some believed it was nothing more than a fairy tale, but others believed it could turn the tide of the war. Lieutenant David Walker stood in the heart of Earth's last defense base, staring at the holographic map of the world. The Sakar's fleet hovered just beyond Earth's atmosphere, ready to strike the final blow. The resistance was growing weaker, and the chances of victory were slipping away. The situation was dire. "Walker, we've got no more time," General Sarah Monroe said, her voice urgent. She was the leader of the resistance, and she knew that if Earth didn't find the weapon soon, it would be over. "We need the hidden weapon. It's the only thing that can save us." Walker turned to face her. He had heard the stories about the hidden weapon, but he never believed them. No one did. It was too powerful, too dangerous, and too mysterious. But now, with Earth on the brink of collapse, he had no choice but to believe. "If the weapon really exists, where do we start looking?" he asked. General Monroe's eyes narrowed, and for the first time, Walker saw a flicker of uncertainty in her expression. "We've tracked its last known location to a secret facility in the mountains. But the Zakars are already closing in. It's a race against time." Walker nodded, his heart pounding. He knew what needed to be done. "I'll find it." The journey to the facility was dangerous, more so than Walker had ever imagined. The Zakars had set up patrols across the entire region, and the mountains were filled with their deadly sentinels. But the resistance had given Walker a small team of veterans who had fought alongside him before. They were the best of the best, and if anyone could find the hidden weapon, it was them. As they trekked through the mountains, Walker couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The air was thick with tension, the silence only broken by the occasional sound of footsteps or the distant rumble of Sakar warships overhead. They were getting closer to the facility, but so were the Sakars. "We need to pick up the pace," Walker muttered, his eyes scanning the landscape. "Agreed," Lieutenant Ava Briggs, a sharp-eyed scout, said, her voice low. "But we can't afford to make a mistake. We're too close to the enemy." The team pressed on, carefully avoiding Zakar patrols, but the tension grew with every step. Time was running out, and the hidden weapon was the only chance they had left. They couldn't afford to fail. Finally, after hours of treacherous travel, they reached the facility, a massive underground complex hidden beneath the mountains. The entrance was concealed by a large rock formation, and the team worked quickly to clear the path. "This is it," Walker said, his voice barely above a whisper. "The hidden weapon is inside." They descended into the facility, moving through the dark, narrow hallways. The walls were lined with ancient technology, systems that predated even the earliest records of human civilization. It was clear that the weapon wasn't just a weapon, it was something far more advanced. "This place is a tomb," Ava muttered, her voice echoing in the empty corridors. "Whatever happened here, it wasn't good." Walker nodded. He had the same feeling. They were walking into something far bigger than they realized. They reached a massive chamber at the heart of the facility. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, glowing with an eerie light. On the pedestal rested a small, intricately designed object, a device that seemed to hum with an otherworldly energy. "The hidden weapon," Walker whispered, stepping forward. But as he reached out to touch the device, a loud alarm sounded, and the room was flooded with red light. The Sakars had found them. "Move, now," Walker shouted, grabbing the device and running. The team sprinted back the way they came, but the Zakars were already closing in. They could hear the pounding of boots, the sound of alien voices shouting in the distance. The team was trapped. "Where's the exit?" Briggs shouted. "Through here," Walker said, pointing to a side corridor. "We'll have to take a detour." They raced down the new path, but the facility seemed to twist and turn, making it impossible to know where they were. The Zakars were hot on their heels, and every second counted. They reached another chamber, but this time, it was different. The walls were lined with strange symbols, glowing faintly in the dark. In the center of the room stood a massive machine, one that looked ancient, but also incredibly advanced. "Wait," Walker said, pausing. "This wasn't part of the plan." A voice echoed through the chamber, an automated system, speaking in a language no one could understand. The machine hummed to life, and the walls began to move, shifting and rearranging. "It's a trap," Briggs said, her voice panicked. "We need to go now." But it was too late. The ground shook, and the chamber seemed to come alive. The hidden weapon in Walker's hands began to vibrate, responding to the machine. Suddenly, the room lit up with a blinding light, and the air felt thick with energy. It was like nothing Walker had ever experienced. "What is this?" Walker shouted, trying to make sense of what was happening. The machine activated, and the wall shifted again, revealing a hidden passage. But it wasn't the escape they had hoped for. The hidden weapon, the device Walker held, began to morph, reshaping itself before their eyes. It wasn't just a weapon, it was a living entity, evolving, adapting to its surroundings. It seemed to recognize Walker, responding to his touch. "This isn't a weapon," Ava gasped. It's alive." Suddenly, the walls of the chamber began to collapse, and the Zakars surged forward. Walker had no choice. With the device now pulsing in his hands, he raised it toward the oncoming soldiers. There was a flash of light, and the Zakars stopped dead in their tracks, frozen in place. The hidden weapon had activated. Walker realized what had just happened. The weapon was not meant to destroy, it was meant to control. And it was in control now. The Zakars were no longer a threat, but Walker and his team weren't out of danger yet. The real power of the hidden weapon had just begun to reveal itself, and Walker wasn't sure if humanity was ready for what came next. As they escaped the collapsing facility, one thing was clear: the war wasn't over. But with the hidden weapon now in their possession, humanity had a chance. The true test had only just begun.